Hey, I have this filter on so it doesn't look so bad under my eyes. I'm still a little self-conscious about it because it's kind of scary looking. Okay, so today I'm here to talk about how we know where our boundaries lie, a good exercise in terms of how we know where our boundaries lie, and then what happens in our body that typically causes the resistance to us setting the boundary. So, all right. I used to feel like, or I should say, it can feel like a constant assault on our energy if we don't have boundaries. So I would be exhausted. I'd be overcommitted because I didn't have any boundaries. And so I felt like not only was I responsible for, everything that everyone had to do, I also was responsible for how people felt, or I thought I was responsible for how people felt about my own choices and how people felt about things that I was doing. And so, what that meant was that I was always trying to manage their feelings. And I was doing it so that I thought I was doing it so that I would produce an outcome that would make them happy, and then I'd be okay, right? Because I was only okay if they were okay. And then I wouldn't have to deal with my own emotions around their anger or disappointment or frustration or unhappiness, right? So I was trying to manage my own emotions by managing others, the outcomes, and managing their emotions as well. So there was no boundary, there was no space between me and that other person. There was no line of where I ended and someone else began. And so then I was taking care of others and others' emotions at the expense of my own needs. So of course we want to be nice, we want to be kind, and we want to be thoughtful. All of those things, although I sometimes have a problem with the word nice. I think we throw it around quite a bit in a way to manipulate people to behave in a way that we want them to, especially as a society. But anyway, taking care of others and others' emotional needs at the expense of our emotions indicates, or the expense of our needs indicates lack of boundary, right? So here's the best way that I've found to know, the best indicator for where the boundaries are. Like, how do I know where I need to set a boundary? Because sometimes we can be unclear when we first start, right? So here's what I've found works best for me. Mostly taking time to observe myself in relationships. So in situations, okay? So I'm just observing the way I feel about things when they happen. So for instance, I felt ignored when my mom was over and we were talking and she was on her phone. I felt ignored. And I write these things down. Maybe not in the moment, but, I notice what I was triggered, I was, irritated, frustrated. Okay, then afterward, I observe myself there, and then afterward, I write it down, what I was feeling. I felt ignored when my mom was playing on her phone when we were talking. I felt dismissed when I was telling Walt about something important that happened and he kept interrupting me. I felt restricted or trapped when Danielle tried to explain my thoughts and my feelings to another colleague of ours when she was trying to explain for me. I like to do that myself. So I felt really restricted, right? And then the other example, the last example I had was I feel like inferior or subordinate, maybe trapped again, when someone orders for me at a restaurant. I don't like that. Okay, so these are all actual occurrences. These are all things that have happened. Now I get to turn them around and say, well, that's what did happen, and this is how I felt when it happened. Now I get to turn it around and say, okay, this is what I do want, right? And so this is when we have the opportunity to make the request. But first we're going to write down, these are the occurrences, this is how I felt, and then this is what I do want, right? So it allows me to start seeing, it's not like a big complaint list, right? Like I'm not going out and attacking someone and saying, hey, you did this. This is for me now to realize how I felt about it so that then I know what I do want and then I can make the request without attacking, right? I'm not attacking someone when I'm setting a boundary or making a request. So now I flip it around and I say this, okay, I will ask my mom to put down her phone when we're talking. I will point out to Walt when he interrupts me and tell him that I'd like to finish speaking before he goes on with his point. I will let Danielle know that I am capable of articulating my own thoughts and needs and that I'd prefer to do it myself. It's important. I'd prefer to do it myself. I will let partners, friends, whomever know that I prefer to order for myself at restaurants because I like to talk to the waitress. I like to ask questions. Sometimes I'm in a different mood or, I have, it's not always predictable what I want and I don't want to be pigeonholed, right? So I do want the opportunity to ask questions and speak for myself and to change, right? I want that freedom. So now I know what I do want. I've written that down too. And now is the magic moment where we come to realize why we haven't set the boundary yet. And this is when you say these things out loud to yourself. Okay? So you've observed the actual occurrences. You've written down how you felt. You've written down, you've flipped it, what I do want. And now you're going to say it out loud, right? So I would say out loud to myself, I will ask my mom to put down her phone when we're talking. Then I pause and listen and I feel it in my body because my body is trying to tell me something, right? My body's like, Okay, so what happened when I said it out loud? What happened? Did my shoulders shrug? Did my face drop? Did my heart sink? Did I get a pit in my stomach? What happened when I said it out loud? Did my face twitch? Because these are signals and reasons why I haven't yet made the request, why I haven't really implemented the boundary. And if you remember from one of the previous videos, a boundary is a rule for playing in our yard. And we make a request of others. And then if the request isn't met or honored, we choose then what our boundary is. Okay, well, my mom, if she chooses not to put down her phone, then I can excuse myself from the conversation. Okay, so that would be my boundary. But what I'm doing is, as I'm saying it out loud, I'm realizing where the resistance lives in my body. And it gives me a good indication as to why I haven't set the boundary yet, because it's going to say, or why I haven't made the request, because it's going to tell me, it's telling me a story, right? What am I afraid of? What's the objection? I'm afraid she'll be mad at me. I'm afraid she won't talk to me. I'm afraid she'll be passive aggressive. Those things have happened, so of course I have that fear. However, if I continue to play into this same cycle, it's just going to perpetuate the pattern, right? My mom isn't ever going to stop talking on her phone if I don't make the request, if she doesn't know that it's something that bothers me. So once I make the request, then I really get to put the ball back in her court and say, oh, if this relationship is important to her, then perhaps she'll be able to honor that. And if not, then I set my boundary of choosing to excuse myself from the conversation. So this again can be helpful with the practice of coming into our body when we have those feelings of like resistance and panic and overwhelm, and we start going into story about what's going to happen, right? We start telling ourselves a story. My mom's going to be mad at me. She's never going to talk to me again. Oh my God. Then we won't talk for 2 weeks. And then what? Like we really blow these stories up in our minds, and they become just catastrophes. So of course that would prevent us from doing something. And our brain does these things because that's how it keeps us safe. Predictability is safety, according to the brain. So something new seems very scary and overwhelming. It takes a lot of practice, and it takes time and focus. Change takes time and focus. So practicing again, coming into our bodies, squeezing everything really tight, every single muscle, taking a deep breath. And then after everything is squeeze, let it go. Breathe out. You can feel that you're here. You can feel you're in the moment of now. And then you can have compassion for yourself and say, I know this seems hard. I know this seems scary. And then we ask ourselves, if I continue to behave in the way that I have been so that my mom is happy, am I happy? Am I getting what I want? And that's goes back to this whole idea, right, of keeping someone else happy at the expense of my needs being met, or even making the request. Perhaps it'll turn into a conversation, but I won't know until I do it. And what I do know is the pattern will remain the same if I don't take the agency in my own life to change it. So I know it's a process, and I know it seems scary, and I know it seems very hard and a huge challenge in the moment. And so if you want to talk one-on-one about kind of how to get through this, or see if you're ready to go into one-on-one coaching so that you can get some support moving through this phase, then just go ahead and click on the link. I'll put the link in the comments. And click on the link, and we can just talk. We can have a discovery call, and we can just talk about what you think is next for you, how you might want to be supported, what might be helpful for you, and what you think you need, and we can just see if we're a good match for that. Okay? Anything else? If you guys have any questions or comments, just link below. And if you want, I think it's probably a good idea if I either put a post up or perhaps a PDF. I don't know if I'll get around to making a PDF today, but put a post up around the steps. Okay? Maybe I'll put that in the comments below too. So comments below our scheduling link and steps to this process. And if you have any questions, either put them in here or post in the group. Everybody learns when someone asks a question. It's not just likely a question for you. It's probably something that can pertain to almost everyone, or at least something that the people can relate to. So, all right, guys, have a great Saturday, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.